Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I am your host, Jeff Hansen. As always, the show is brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com and CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. If you have not yet done so, please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video. Please share it with your friends. It really helps a new platform like ours grow. We appreciate all of your support so far. Today, I want to talk about the transfer portal. Full disclosure, this is inspired by a tweet from new defensive coordinator Jay Hill. He was responding to a question from BYU Sports Nation asking, has BYU's net gain or net loss been greater because of the transfer portal this year? And I want to focus in on the defensive side of the ball because presumably that's what Jay Hill was talking about when he responded, gained. And if we look at things at just raw numbers, that's kind of an interesting statement. So let's take a look at what BYU has lost in the transfer portal, and then we'll take a look at what BYU has added in the transfer portal. First and foremost, 13 players who were slated to play defense have left the program since December. That's a lot of players. 13 is no small number. That's no Colorado roster turnover, but that's a lot of roster turnover, especially at a school like BYU. But if we break down those 13 players, really ask yourself what kind of impact BYU has lost so far. Two players, Logan Fano and Tate Romney, never played a down for BYU. I think Logan Fano has an immensely bright future ahead of him at the University of Utah. And Tate Romney would have been a great fit in Jay Hill's defensive scheme as that hybrid safety linebacker. But neither one of them ever made an impact at BYU. You lose out on the potential of the future, but you haven't lost any on-field production with those two. Two more players, Keenan Peely and Gabe Judy Lawley, went to Tennessee. Look, those two are both upperclassmen. Those two were both experienced. Those two both would have had roles in this defense. They both ended up in the SEC, where they are going to play, and hopefully they play well. Those two, no matter how you slice it, that's a loss. That's a net loss for BYU, their roster for their defense going into the 2023 football season. So that's four players total that went to a Power 5 school. Two of them have never played a down of college football, and the other two went to the SEC. The remaining 9 players, it gets really difficult to argue that BYU lost in a material way on the field. 5 players have signed and been announced at FCS programs. Brooks Miley at Northern Colorado. Corbin Green went the junior college route. Dean Jones is committed to Southern Utah. Isaiah Perez is at Eastern Washington, and Nathaniel Gillis is also at Northern Colorado. None of those 5 players made a tangible impact on the field for BYU, and all of them ended up at the FCS level. I don't think that's a net loss for BYU. I think Jay Hill would much rather have those scholarships in his pocket to play with. Frankly, that's kind of an indictment on the old coaching staff and the talent evaluation and who they chose to bring in. These players did nothing wrong. They accepted a great offer from BYU, but maybe these are players that shouldn't have been at BYU in the first place. 4 more players have yet to commit, yet to find a place to transfer to. Mac Aloisio, Zoom Esplin, Logan Peely, and George Udo. Peely and Udo on that list seem like sure bets to find a home in the near future, but the other two, it remains to be seen where they end up. So those are the losses on the defensive side of the ball. 13 players and really only 2 that have made a material impact on the field for BYU up to this point in their careers. Now, who has BYU brought in? They brought in Eddie Heckard, an FCS All-American from Weber State. He's familiar with the Jay Hill defensive scheme. He's been productive. He has a ton of college experience, though not at the Power 5 level, but he looks like he is primed to be one of BYU's best cornerbacks on day one. They brought in AJ Vongphachanh, that big-time experience out of Utah State. He's been a multi-year starter, and he will probably slot in as a starter immediately at BYU and make an impact on the field. And then a pair of Boise State incoming players, Isaiah Bagnah and Jackson Cravens, both of whom have multiple years of starting experience, have hundreds of reps under their belt, in Craven's case, thousands of reps under their belt. I think it's really difficult to argue that BYU has not gained in the transfer portal, even though only 4 scholarship players have been announced on that side of the ball. Now, the Cougars can still go and make an even bigger impact with new additions into or from the transfer portal into the BYU program. Harrison Taggart from Oregon is a guy that they're looking at. Ajani Carter from Utah State is a cornerback that BYU is looking at. There are a number of defensive tackles who are also on BYU's list that they are kicking the tires on and considering potentially bringing in. Multiple Power 5 defensive tackles. Look, BYU has made a big impact out of the transfer portal this year, and it is positioned to get even bigger in the coming weeks. Harrison Taggart maybe is the biggest name that everybody will be paying attention to. From what I hear, he could be at a visit to BYU later this weekend. His sister just received a scholarship offer for the BYU track and field team, and it's potentially those two are going to visit BYU at the same time. If BYU can land Harrison Taggart, then unquestionably, there's not even a debate. BYU has had more impact coming in from the transfer portal than impact lost by way of the transfer portal. As always, I'm your host, Jeff Hansen. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Dose. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not yet already. Please like this video. And until next time, give them hell.